Episode 45. Welcome back. We are live and in person at Fortress Melbourne, I dear. Your wishes come true.
I know, very exciting, and thank you everyone for turning up. Thank you to nobody believes us because there's no noise from the crowd.
Let's hear some noise, crowd.
All right.
There we go.
All right, that's good. Thank you, Mike, for running the clap track on the podcast.
It's like a Seinfeld episode.
And thank you to Adrian and to Fortress for hosting. I don't know why I'm doing thank yous. I don't do anything. You're in charge of everything.
No, you can do thank yous.
That's all I'm going to do with thank yous. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Adrian Giles. Thank you, Fortress. And especially thank you for the audience.
We'll get Adrian up. We're going to interview Adrian, who not only owns Fortress, which is this incredible place we're sitting in here now, but obviously one of the great Australian entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
So looking forward to getting Adrian up shortly. But how was your week?
I just got back from the Gold Coast last night. It was 23 degrees and sunny every
exactly
single
the same
day.
As Melbourne.
Yeah, that's why I saw on the weather that Melbourne was similar. And so I got back here. I feel fantastic. It was a great experience, and I'm raring to go for this show. I've got nothing but positive emotion right now. So
I had a few things happen this week. So we love.
Was I meant to say to you, how was your week?
You were.
Sorry.
Yeah.
How was your week?
My week was good. So after the taxi debacle of last week, actually a number of listeners messaged me to say they've also been ripped off in the same fashion by a taxi driver.
I doubt that. Did they really message you?
They did.
I'm shocked.
100% they did.
Okay.
I got a message from Dan Katay, a great entrepreneur who runs Fun Day, and he messaged me, I reckon, 7:30 that Tuesday morning. We go live at sort of 4 a.m. So within a couple of hours, he'd listened and had a similar experience.
All right. Well, I don't want him to encourage that kind of conversation on the podcast, but we'll...
Well, I'm always one way or the other. So a couple of actually really nice stories happened to me this week. So I think one thing that can't be overstated enough is the importance of customer service in businesses.
Agreed.
And I used to go to there was a place around the corner from us, our work, called the Contrarians. It used to do incredible sort of Malaysian fusion sort of food. And the food was unbelievable. And then maybe some mid-COVID, it suddenly just shut. And we thought, what happened? It was always busy. It was always good. Turned out I hadn't paid rent in like 2 years.
I went there with you when you were doing your previous podcast after the recording.
Yeah, that's
Is that
right.
possible?
Yeah. So it was incredible. That got replaced.
I thought it was okay.
It was great. Anyway, that place has now become something else. I had to now find another place. I found this Vietnamese place, maybe another block down on Clarendon Street, which is our local sort of area. And I'm trying to shred for going overseas. You may have noticed.
I did walk in and wonder what was different about you.
So anyway, I was looking for, and I found a Vietnamese place that does really healthy vegetarian pho. And I went to this place 2 or 3 times. They didn't really, sort of normal service. I went back a 4th time, and there was sort of the owner. He's probably a 55-year-old Vietnamese guy. And he greeted me like an old friend. Like he almost ran up and hugged me and said, clearly it just triggered. I've been there 3 or 4 times. And he gave me like a free drink. I didn't want one, but he offered me a free drink, gave me a discount. And he does this with, and what's just me.
You'd be a cheap free drink.
Yeah, well,
because not alcohol.
I had to have water. So yeah, I didn't want to waste
what
water.
What free drink do you want? I just have tap water.
I felt bad getting the free water. But anyway, and he did this with probably 30% of the people in the restaurant. And you walk down Clarendon Street, and it's an interesting strip there because a lot of places have gone under. And this Vietnamese place is full every day, and every other place is half full at best. And it just shows the importance of just going that extra mile with people just don't think how important it is.
I don't understand this story at all. So can I ask you some questions?
What's there not to understand?
Well, did you know him or not, or was he doing the trick that?
That's the point. I don't know him.
You don't know him.
If I knew him, it wouldn't matter the story.
I see. So he greeted you like an old friend, and
Absolutely.
did you feel like, where do I know this guy from, or you didn't?
No. I realised
you knew it was fake.
I realised he recognised me as a customer. It wasn't fake. It was legitimate friendliness.
He recognised you as a customer, as in he recognised the fact that you are a potential customer.
The fact that I've been there 4
times. That was
times.
his customer acquisition.
It was customer retention. He'd already acquired me, and he was retaining
you hadn't
me.
ordered yet.
This is a lifetime value play. This isn't a CVA play.
All right. So a guy weirdly greets you as an old friend who hasn't met you before.
He met me. Just he hadn't. We didn't grow up in Vietnam together, but we knew each other.
Well, I don't. All right. And you were happy about this experience?
I just thought. Well, I'm happy in a sense that this is a guy who understands the lifetime value of it. You think of we go back.
Well, he doesn't understand the lifetime value of a customer because you are not the guy he's looking for.
No,
based on your likelihood of spending big in his
restaurant. Okay. So maybe my basket size is high, but my retention's high.
That's
but
true. Low basket
I remember
size.
thinking we used to have a business called Deals.com where we used to actually own the website.
You are, by the way, the highlight of the importance of not having to reacquire an existing customer, because your basket size can only deal with one CAC. Like, you cannot sustain more than...
I remember when we had a deals business, and the challenge we had from a business perspective is we didn't control the end-to-end experience. So we were dealing with often small, at best medium-sized businesses, usually small businesses, like this guy. And because we didn't have control, and what made it a really challenging business is A, small basket size, but B, we were at the whim of the way small businesses dealt with clients. And so many, probably the majority, didn't understand inherently the nature of lifetime value. They didn't understand that deals.com or Kudo or Scoopon, whoever it was, can bring them a customer, and a customer for basically for free, because their margin would be our commission. And they treat them badly because they were a discount customer, or they think they were a one-off customer. They didn't understand that if they treated that customer really well, they would turn that one-off discount customer into a lifetime customer.
I get that.
This guy inherently understood that. I think it's probably maximum 10% of small businesses that generally understand the value and the importance of a lifetime. Like, our businesses understand that. Digital businesses inherently understand lifetime value, because we also inherently understand what a CPA is, cost of acquisition, cost per acquisition. Well, you know, if I'm paying $300 to acquire a Luxuryscapes customer, I want to make sure I don't lose them after the first time they've bought a $300 thing at a 20% margin. But small business don't think in terms of CPA. They don't think in terms of lifetime value. The good ones maybe don't mathematically think about it, but they understand inherently the principle of it.
But don't you think, especially in hospitality, it's amazing how many people are running businesses in hospitality, and they haven't worked out that the word hospitality is connected to the word hospitable? And it's a horrible experience. And you think, whatever industry you should be in, it shouldn't be one where you have to make people happy. And so this guy's obviously the opposite extreme. Let me ask you a question about your deals business, just to have the counter narrative on what you've just pitched.
Okay.
How much were you taking of the restaurant's revenue?
varied.
How did it work?
So it started high.
Because you say, go and buy this thing, and it's usually $2 million, and you can get it for $20 or something, right? That was the, here's a voucher.
Deal would be $100 of food for $70 or $60.
So then you collect the $60 on the site. You keep the $60?
We take the 60 and we remit, call it 80% back to the small business.
Right. So effectively, it's kind of like a $12 CAC.
No, it's a...
No, because you take the 60,
the real
you keep
CAC
20% of it, so you're keeping $12, and they're giving away...
Our margin was 20%, give or take.
Yeah, and so effectively what they're paying is the $30, well, $40, whatever you say, I can't remember the numbers used, but $60 for $100, let's say. So the $40 loss of food revenue plus $12 to you. So on $100 of food, $52 was what they're not getting.
Yeah.
And so how is that viable?
It worked out basically, well, it probably wasn't, but it worked out basically break even.
Well, how do you feel about that business model, where the summary of
the
the business is it probably wasn't viable?
Well, and that's the reason we switched to Luxuryscapes for 2/3 reasons there. Reason one is basket size was 40x.
Yeah,
so
it's terrible selling $60
and making $12.
It's a horrible business.
Well, the very first day we launched, the very first day we launched, we sold a coffee and cake for $5. We made $1. So you got to sell a lot of $1 things to make money. And we sold 700. Business went out of business like 2 months later. So we had to refund everybody the dollar.
Those two events may not have been unrelated.
Probably not. But yeah, the 3 problems. One is the basket size was too small. 2 was we just had a terrible lifetime value because we didn't have control over the end to end. And 3, the acquisition costs and commissions started to compress.
Who do you think owned that customer?
We own the customer, but we
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah, so you own the customer. And so really the restaurant is paying 52% of its revenue away that it should be getting in order to have a momentary dalliance with a customer that you own, and that the likelihood of them getting back is minimal.
No, we share. Like, I went back to...
That probably wasn't your pitch deck, I'm guessing.
Yeah, the pitch deck was you get a customer for basically for free.
Yeah.
And you make of that what you will, essentially. Like, the problem was, and this is where it broke down, is vendors thought they could make money out of it. And when they're thinking, and then
I see.
They thought they can get breakage.
So they thought they could make money on the first, on the deal or on the I see. Do you think Uber Eats, we don't pick on them, Deliveroo, are they out of business or are they still in?
They're in business in the UK.
They're out of Australia. Who else is left in Australia?
DoorDash.
So these businesses, you think what are they taking off the merchant?
It's a massive range. I think
25%?
10 to 30.
Right. You think that's viable? Because this is not deals, this is business as usual.
Well, remember, Uber's actual margin is more like 10% when you factor out the delivery fee. So they get a 10% clear.
Well, I'm paying for delivery. What are you talking about?
Not all
You're
of
not
it,
paying
though.
for
The
delivery?
$5 you pay doesn't cover the whole delivery. It takes 20 minutes to go to your place.
Right.
Who's getting
I
paid
don't know.
15
There's a
bucks
lot
an
of.
hour?
I've noticed a lot of fees on the. Like, there's a delivery fee and a service fee.
Yeah, there's a couple of fees. And often, your Uber ones, they wipe the delivery fee.
Well, I care about the restaurant. So, what do you think the
Yep.
restaurant is giving up of their $150 order that is being made?
Call it 25%.
25%. You
Yep.
think they can make money?
Well, they do it. So you wouldn't think every single person on Uber Eats
Well,
is
they've got
irrational.
fixed costs. They have to cover
Yeah,
their fixed
exactly.
costs.
Which is why I think I don't think you want to be completely reliant. They said the dark kitchen principle, which essentially is 100% Uber Eats, DoorDash, seems to be quite good. Travis has made a bunch of money out of that. Travis Kalanick from Uber. So it seems to be a model that is working. Jez lives in London. He's got a dark kitchen out his back door, literally. So it seems to be working.
When I was in the Gold Coast, this is a related segue before you know.
Just before you segue, just on Uber. But on Uber Eats, I
was very worried about, because I said this the four-letter word we're not allowed to say, Uber.
There we go.
Because all you talk about is that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I got a relevant story.
all right. Is it a short story?
Pretty short. I was up in Cairns last week, as we know, for Cairns and Cairns, which is a big marketing thing. They have a travel thing called Travel Days up there. And Uber was a big... So it used to be basically News Corp, all the TV stations. News Corp's still got a presence, but it's really been taken over by Pinterest and Uber and all the digital advertising business. And Uber is now a big advertising business. So they've got effectively the Uber Eats bidding stuff. So they get a lot more margin by people bidding up the spot on Uber Eats. And they've also now about to start putting in the iPads in Ubers, which is super interesting.
Because the first results on Uber Eats are sponsored results,
Pretty much.
effectively.
But the really interesting concept of, think of the data Uber has on you. So you're going to the airport, you don't know how much you spend, they know you're Uber One. How great for Luxury Escapes to target you on that iPad in front of you while you're on the way to the airport.
I can think of nothing I'd enjoy more than having Luxury Escapes are right, but why do I want to see that?
I'd say that. I don't think that's a big issue.
All right.
Ooh.
You lost your...
going.
Since you've dropped the padding of your microphone, I do want to say, people that are listening don't know, but we're holding our microphones for this episode.
Yeah.
I'm not supportive of that, just for future
I don't mind
reference. Well, I don't like it at all.
Too lazy.
I don't know. I'm getting not lazy.
Massive
God,
bicep
you really
coming
don't
to
give
good
me
use.
the benefit of the doubt. Well, we haven't all been shredding in the gym before coming here. It's a bit heavy to hold. Can I tell my story now, or are we still talking about Uber?
Carry on.
I'm going to talk about Uber.
Okay.
All
I thought
right.
you weren't allowed to talk about it.
No, I'm going to tell you what happened.
I'm banned, but you can talk about it.
So I ordered an Uber from Gold Coast Airport, the friendliest airport in the world. Don't you
great. I
agree?
love Gold Coast.
Unbelievably
So good.
friendly. And I was there in the Gold Coast with my daughter, who's here. We're not going to embarrass her though, but she's sitting here, and my mum. And I ordered an Uber through the app, and I ordered, what's it called? I can't never remember what it's called.
You're
Premier.
the most expensive one.
It's not even that. We've had this discussion. I'm not going in through it again.
like
And
20,
so,
but it's
no, I'm not going through
20%,
this again.
20
and
or
so
50%
order,
more
I'm going to call it
expensive.
premium.
Rolls Royce rocks up,
Yeah, well, the thing is, usually a Tesla rocks up,
which I'm not a big fan of.
which I'm not a fan of. And like I told you, like this experience that I had last week, and so this is what happened on my way back to the airport. I went off platform. So I was so happy that the guy picked me up in a Lexus and not a Tesla. He gave me his card, obviously, as always happens.
That never happens to me.
Well, I think when you take
They
Uber
they
Pool,
see the,
they don't give you a card.
They see the money. Yeah.
They just look at the seat and see what you've done to the seat before you get out. And so,
I think I'm doing it at the seat.
not you, but you're
okay.
you're a good passenger.
Yeah.
And so I once took Uber Pool. Anyway, that's the story for
Really?
another day. Yeah.
I'm shocked. We've had a mistake.
No, I take trains. I thought this might be the car equivalent of a train.
Was it good?
It's a car equivalent of a train with a tiny carriage where people that stink sit on you.
Yeah, it's not great.
So anyway, so I went off platform and I got this guy. He came and picked me up, punctual.
The way back.
On the way back, I gave him the same price. He got to keep all of it.
Yeah.
It was a great experience. So as an introductory service, I'm a big fan of Uber.
Yeah. Well, it's great for that. It's great for the guy because he's got a free CPA. That's the classic.
That's right. That's right. So that was a nice experience.
Yeah.
Can I talk about something else that's
can.
unrelated to transportation
Absolutely.
or trips? So I had this interesting experience this week, which I'm very interested in your take on. I tried to think about which polarity you would land on with this story, and I'm not entirely sure, but I think we might be aligned on this. So it was the birthday of a friend of mine last week, and they received a birthday greeting from none other than Sir Richard Branson. And it was not...
Is this a Cameo thing or different?
Well, that's very impressive that you know about that. So it was not on this platform called Cameo where you can pay to have celebrities.
Classic COVID business, that one.
Yeah, is it dead now, that business?
I think it's not dead. I think it's not what it was.
Yeah. which is you pay, probably Branson would be thousands of dollars to record a birthday message, presumably.
You'd hope.
If he's on that. Anyway, so it wasn't on that. This was real. It was a real birthday message. And she showed me this birthday message, and it was very kind of specific and targeted. And what my response to that was?
AI?
Yeah, I said, no one's going to believe you. They're going to think it's a deep fake.
Yeah, for sure.
And kind of the penny dropped. And then I thought about that, and this is my thought. It's going to be very extreme. I thought producing deep fakes of real people should be a criminal offence punished with a custodial sentence. What do you think about that?
It's equivalent to probably theft.
Well,
It's theft of IP, really.
Well, I think it's worse than theft of IP.
How is
I
it
think
worse?
it's like me writing a letter somewhere. And I wrote this whole letter. Let's say it was a letter full of praise and asking if I could pay more to Uber, and I signed it with your name on the bottom and sent it away to Uber. That's fraud. That's
Theft and fraud.
much worse than theft. And I think deep fakes, whether they're auditory, audio or video, that's a much worse version of that. And I think it needs to be stamped out immediately before it takes hold at all. And so I think it should be a crime
I think you're right.
with a custodial sentence.
Well, it really is a form of fraud and theft. You're right. I think I'm interested to see how. That's a pretty mild case of it. Big deal either way. But certainly if you're starting to impersonate, and if you heard those stories about people stealing money on the back of fake Zoom calls with 25 deepfakes, it probably is in that real realm of fraud.
Or things that go on at high school with high school students and deep fakes there. I mean, there's this that leads to people killing themselves
100%.
With political leaders. It leads to all sorts.
That happens. That can happen on social media without deep fakes. But it can be worse.
I know. All right. So we're in agreement on this.
We are in agreement.
Custodial sentence, crime, deep fakes.
Well, I think treat it like fraud.
All right. Well, we've solved that problem, so I'm very pleased about that.
Kick it off.
I'm sure I've got some more things I want to raise with you. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, go for it.
We have to just mention this for
clean this up.
We have to, clean this up. We have to mention this just for briefly. King's birthday honours, scrap them, right? Scrap them.
I actually reckon they generally do a pretty good job.
Did you get one?
No.
Is that why you're saying this?
I nominated someone once.
What was your services to what? What would you get?
No,
But I want to know what you would get.
Yourself.
Services to travel?
Service to podcasting.
I'll write a thing to you. Services to the podcasting industry.
I think I'm going to struggle.
I would not get anything for services to the podcasting industry because I do say little of the show. Okay, well, I'll write your reference if you need one.
There's quite a big crowd today. I reckon 90% of people said, I don't think Idea's going to come on time. I think people are very well aware of your punctuality issues.
I was slightly early.
You were. Well, you were early based on your record. You're late based on the actual advertised time.
I was so fashionably late. No, go on. You're sidetracking yourself.
So the case, I actually forgot what I was talking about.
Stay focused.
So I nominated somebody for just the general honour maybe 5 years ago. Very well. This person had started a charity. He was actually a relative of mine. Started a charity, a really good charity involved in the cancer space.
I'll ask you some questions about this. Not the individual, but so what they had done was not their paid day.
No, it was voluntary. 20 years of voluntary. Started a charity, 100% deserving, and got it very quickly. So
what did they get?
They got an OAM, I think it was. So it was a slight. It wasn't the AC or the AO.
I want to do a show of hands, which is not going to go well on audio.
Yeah, it doesn't go well.
But are we videoing this or we're not videoing this? I see
there's a
cameras
camera there.
but they're not facing that way. All right, so I don't even notice these things. All right, so put up your hand if you feel more than 90% confident that you could order the honours, the letters and stuff, from most honourable to, or we can't say least honourable, to top to bottom. Put up your hand if you're 90% sure you could do it.
No,
it's like
one, Gab.
It's like 2%.
Yeah, it's pretty low.
Can you do it?
AC's top.
Yep.
AO's next.
Okay. Yep.
And then they all kind of OAM. Kind of
AM?
Yeah,
OAM. Do you know what they stand for? The top one. Do you know what that is?
Companion of the Order of Australia.
Oh, you're really across this. What's about the next one?
That's just Order of Australia.
Member of the Order of Australia. Oh, no, Officer of the Order of Australia.
Okay, officer. Yeah, that's right.
Do you think a companion sounds better or officer?
I think AO sounds the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about AM? Member? That's member.
Well, definitely.
I'm telling
AO
you.
sounds the best. Because AO is what you think of.
I've moved on. So AM member. What about OAM? This is a good one.
I don't know what's OAM.
It's not really exactly part of the honours. It's a medal of the Order of Australia.
That's right.
You just get a medal. You're not really.
But you still get letters after your name.
Yeah,
which is the key thing.
And so that's the one that they give. That in a way, that is the most Like that's the best
Deserving.
one.
Yep.
Deserving, exactly.
That's the charity people and the
For people that
yeah.
have not made donations to political parties and are not connected
exactly.
to politics.
So I think let's go to so my experience has been great, by the way, historically.
So they got an OAM.
I think they generally get it right. Obviously, I got real issues with people getting one for their day job. Yes. Politicians more than anyone.
Yeah, agree.
Dan Andrews more than anyone again.
Well, we can agree with that, even if we didn't feel a way about his leadership. Can I just be clear on something as well? Like, as a human being, like my issues are not with him as a human being.
My issues with him as a human being.
As a human being, okay. Well, all right. This is why we do a lot of editing on this podcast.
So I might not make it.
No, you can say that. That's not, because I don't really know him as a human being, and my interactions with him as a human being have been some of his values I agree with and support, but as a leader, he was just a horrific and appalling leader, okay? And so to me, to go and say, this is all the stuff that happened as a leader, and it's still, at the least, you would say very politically controversial, and at worst, you'd say catastrophic for Victoria, and the problems are still coming down the pipe. To give someone the top honour when they were paid to do that job, we're not going to disagree here. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so I think politicians shouldn't get them. I think they should be excluded.
100%.
You're still with me.
I think you probably should argue.
We agree a lot on this
anybody
episode.
people get services, rich people who get it for services to business as part of their.
What does that mean? Services to business.
Service to anything is like I think Dan got it for service to public health of all things. Like
well,
people,
is that right?
Died.
Is that right?
100%.
I mean, I feel very upset about that. Services to business. What does that mean?
You're rich.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Pretty much.
You agree that's ridiculous?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
All right, ridiculous.
I think if you retire from business and spend 20 years in not-for-profit
mentoring
world,
or whatever. I don't mind mentoring
or
what about public servants?
I'm less bothered by that.
For their day
slightly bothered.
Yeah, I don't like not for your day job.
I think the argument you make for public servants is they could potentially get more money in the private sector. They choose to work in the public sector.
Well, I don't agree with that. That used to be the case, but there are public servants earning $750,000.
Yeah, but there were partners at law firms earning $4 million.
All right, big deal. And there's like billionaires, but it doesn't mean that person could be that person.
No, but I think
if only they didn't take the public service
generally
job.
speaking, public servants probably get a pay rise. In most cases, should they go to the private sector? There's always exceptions.
Well, it's not just about money. There's other benefits to being.
But they have given something up, as opposed to a politician who's given nothing up.
I'm a no for public servants unless they do something beyond their day job.
Yeah, I'm not a bullish yes. I'm not as abhorrently appalled by as you.
I think they have to overhaul the entire system. I don't like any of it. Shut it down. Rebuild it.
The people who have justifiably earned it historically.
I know.
So that's a challenge.
Make changes to it.
Yeah. I'll do another topic. So you may have seen a couple of days ago, obviously we released this pod on Monday.
I just want to say, you've got big problems with that microphone. That little covering it's not doing well.
It's all right.
You've got
a bit wonky.
Blame Fortress. No, we can't blame Fortress. Everything's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. So a couple of days ago, this is obviously gets released Monday. There was a big announcement to the travel sector, Trip a Deal, which is basically a package tour business. Do a lot of sales to Japan, to China, to the US. Got bought in full by Qantas, which is do you know much about this transaction, the history of the transaction?
I remember when it happened. I read about it subsequently, just closing. You're not going to say this. I mean, maybe I'll say this. A regular person in your position wouldn't say what I'm about to say, so I'll say it on your behalf. You might say it. But I'll say, I view Trip a Deal as like the poorer cousin of luxury escapes. That's my view of them in the marketplace. And I don't say that to flatter you, because I think we're well and truly past that dynamic in our relationship. So that's how I view them.
Like, in many cases...
Smaller and less good stuff. That's how I view them.
Yeah, but they service a bigger market. They probably have a bigger addressable market than us, just selling the 3 to 4 star stuff. And there's a lot of businesses that have been very, very successful selling stuff to lots of people.
Yeah.
So I think there's a story. So everybody assumes we're competitors. We're probably not really, because we just have a slightly different. Yeah, there's a tiny bit of crossover.
Do they do luxury stuff or not?
A little bit, but not really.
Okay.
So and they're more tours. We absolutely sell tours as well, and they sell hotels, but they specialise in tours.
So
it's 90%
like
tours.
Kmart sells a bag and Louis Vuitton sells a bag.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we started at a very similar time. These guys are up in Byron Bay. It's actually a really great story of entrepreneurship and grit. So these are a couple of guys who started the business in a place that there isn't much big business. I think the biggest employer in Byron outside the council, I think. So they built this business and they pivoted. They started with, hear that? You're hearing that back? Or this is me? I feel like I'm getting some echo. No? Okay. So they've been a great story out of Byron. They built this, but they started doing hotels. They moved into tours. They found that better, and they've done a really good job. And during COVID, like so many travel, again, due to not due to COVID, due to politicians shutting stuff down when they shouldn't have, they really struggled, like many travel businesses, and got some funding from Ben Gray's firm BGH. Do you know much about BGH?
Yeah, I mean, we won't go into a whole lot of detail, but they are very astute. And we know how astute they are because Ben Gray has got one of the biggest houses on the entire Mornington Peninsula.
Well, that was from when he was at TPG in Newbridge.
So a really smart private equity firm with a great track record.
Probably the best private equity guy Australia's seen in terms of how much money he's been able to make. The Pep guy is probably pretty close as well. But Ben's definitely been up there.
I don't know how many minutes into this episode we are, but we finally got someone who's the best. Okay, good. All right, we got there.
25 minutes in.
All right, took a lot longer than usual. All right.
But he's done incredible.
We've got to get the worst.
He's rebooted his BGH with Robin Bishop and Simon Hale, two very well-regarded investment bankers. And they've got a $2.5 billion fund. So this was a pretty small acquisition for them. They did it during COVID. It was relatively opportunistic, but I think they bought in I think it was publicly announced, a valuation of around $50 million in COVID. And I think they bought just over half the business. It turned out to be a really astute deal by the founders as well, because it's, again, so easy for founders to overvalue their business.
Was it all money going into the business?
I think it was all money going in, or
because they needed it to survive.
Yeah, exactly. And it takes a great degree of humility to be able to do a massive down round, because they were looking at $multi-100 million valuations pre-COVID. Yet they had the humility to be able to say, it's more important we save this thing. We're going to dilute ourselves 50%, but we need to save ourselves.
I don't know. I'm all in favour of the transaction that they did, but I'm not sure I'd call that humility. I think it's better than humility. It's like the survival instincts of founders, Yep. And if they have to get punched in the face in order not to lose their business, they'll take some punches in the face. I think, but I don't think it wasn't humility. It was just survival instincts.
Sure. Okay. COVID comes out, and COVID's finishing, and Ben and Norm and Richard did a deal with Qantas, who. Obviously, the big airline, and through that loyalty part of the business, Qantas bought 50.1% of the business. I presume they had some sort of back-ended earn-out, which I don't know the details of. It hasn't been made public, but I presume that's what they did. So I think Qantas paid it's hard to ascertain from Qantas earn-out stuff in the annual reports, but it's hard to work it out. It looked like it was a $100 million valuation, but could have been wrong there. So Ben Gray, or could have been a bit more. So BGH made, I think, 3 or 4 times on the first transaction. And you saw last week they announced that they sold the whole business for effectively a $420 million total valuation. So 8x in the space of 4 years, really.
That original transaction where Qantas bought in,
Qantas bought in, or where Ben bought in?
The transaction where Qantas bought their first control
2 years ago.
That is the famous transaction that cost you your chairman's lounge, wasn't it?
No, it was different. That was when we changed from Qantas to Virgin. That cost me the chairman's lounge.
Right. Okay. All right, so that's why you're speaking so positively about this business, because this was not the reason of the chairman's.
No, I think it's speaking positively. I think it's a good transaction for Qantas. They gets to. Qantas have a lot of
$400 million
points.
Feels crazy to me.
I think this business makes genuine EBITDA. And the
40 mil? Forget EBITDA.
Nah,
we have to have this EBITDA discussion again.
Travel business
Profit
don't have much
before
we
tax.
don't have much dar.
Oh, you don't have much dar. Okay. You're not chucking a whole lot of developers onto
Triple Deal would have very few developers, so they'd have very little data. So I think that profit's pretty clean.
So let's call it profit before. Let's call it profit before.
My mum, who's in the audience, mainly because of you, because she didn't really care about coming to see me.
Well, she does get to see you on a much more frequent basis than me.
But she actually said last week, you guys talk about EBITDA all the time. What's this EBITDA? Yeah. And I realised we actually never explain it. So why don't you give an explanation of what EBITDA is for most people who actually don't know the sort of intricacies of finance?
So this is how I explain it. But I'm a bit cautious because I am in a software business where I think it has legitimacy.
Yeah.
But now I'm going to explain it in a slightly disparaging way. But I don't think it's totally... but software, I think, might be the carve-out of being disparaging. So there are lots of different... When companies talk about earnings, it means many different things to different people. And often it just means whatever you need it to mean for the transaction you're doing at the time. So the most honest earnings, you would say, for most businesses is net profit after tax. That means we sold stuff, that's revenue. We had costs, that expenses, and then we made some money at the end, hopefully, and then we paid some tax on it, and then we had a net profit after tax.
Which you can give to your shareholders.
Yeah, and if it corresponds to making cash, which sometimes it doesn't necessarily, and they may not be so tightly connected, but in an ideal world, it corresponds roughly to cash, and you can pay dividends to your shareholders. And in that was the happy world of business 1850. We could say, right? No, true, right? Because there was none of this other stuff. 1900.
I think EBITDA was invented like in the 70s, wasn't it?
No, but this idea, like basically, there was like what you sold was roughly the cash that came in, and you paid your bills, kind of in a timely manner, and you were left with the cash at the end, and you paid some tax. And then like the world gets more complicated because some people say we don't want to talk about net profit after tax because we don't think it looks as good as our business really is. And so then we say, well, what other things can we talk about that give a more accurate reflection of how great our business really is? And so one of those things is that you could say, so one of the things people talk about commonly is profit before tax. That just means how much am I...
EBIT.
So
interest as well.
I might be a bit pedantic and say just PBT, profit before tax, which just means we've put everything in there, but we just are not taking out the income tax part because income tax is different in different jurisdictions. In Australia, it's close to 30%. In other places, it might be 15%. In other, it might be 60%. And so we want to see how good is the business actually at making money before we get taxed. So that's still easy to understand.
I've never actually understood why tax is ignored, by the way.
Because I think that...
Like you're in the jurisdiction you're in, you can't change it. So
I know, but you might have tax losses that offset some of the tax.
Yeah, absolutely. But in which case your profit after tax includes those taxes, like gets reduced for that.
All right, so that's maybe, but that's a separate question. And so then we say, well, what else can we take out to make it look better? Well, how about financing costs? Because really financing costs... they're not actually part of the business. They're just money that we've borrowed in order to buy assets.
And I think the reasoning is I can fund it by way of equity rather than debt, which has no fixed costs.
So if I've got a $2 million loan and I pay $200,000 a year of interest, maybe we should leave that $200,000 a year in because I could get rid of that $200,000 if I went to shareholders and said, let's put in another $2 million, pay off the loan, and then we won't have that $200,000 a year. And so that's earnings before interest and tax. So the number gets bigger. So we're getting bigger. And then what we say...
That's probably a really commonly used metric as well.
I agree. That
more than NPAT, I reckon.
It's hard to disagree with genuine, honest, hand on your heart EBIT, as long as you understand how leveraged the business is. That is, how much debt do you have compared to, say, the profit that you're making? Because your EBIT can look awfully good the day before you go broke because you can't pay your interest on your loans.
We actually report EBIT without the I, which is highly unusual because we have a cash float and interest is positive.
Do you know what that's called? There's a word for that in
what is that?
Corporate finance. NOPAT.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, net operating profit after tax. Are you before tax or after?
I say
after
before
tax.
Oh,
before.
Yeah,
okay.
Either way, it doesn't make a difference.
So there's one if you remove the interest but not the tax. It's called NOPAT.
Got it.
Okay. That is one of the most useless facts ever. So, and so then how can we make the number even bigger? Because now we're getting somewhere, right? Well, there's this thing called depreciation and amortization. They're kind of two sides of the same coin. One is where you are pushing down physical assets that you bought, and one is
a factory.
Like a factory, and so that's depreciation. And one is where you're pushing down the value of intangible assets. We'll get to that one. And so you might say, and sometimes it's legitimate. If I'm a retail business and I rent a shop and I build the whole fit out for the store and it costs $1 million, I shouldn't expense that all on the first day because that's going to drive sales over the next 5 years. It's
going to last 5 years.
It's going to last. And so each year I'll just do, we'll call it linear, I'll do 20% each year into my expense line. And so that will be a depreciation expense. And so instead of $1 million, each year for 5 years, it'll be $200,000. And so that is a legitimate expense.
Yep.
That should be in your expenses.
Otherwise, you'd have an incorrect profit on every year.
That's right.
Massively on year one and somewhat on year two.
But maybe I don't want that in my profit line. So I just say I'll use earnings before interest tax, depreciation and amortization. Amortization is the best of all. Now, I say this is legitimate for software businesses that build software that are being used and sold to a third party, okay? And so if you have a whole lot of developers and it is a very large expense in your business and they are building software that, like the fit out in the store, will be used for years into the future, then it would be mistaken to go and expense all of that in the year that you incur those expenses. And that's most software businesses. Your favourite undervalued business, Atlassian, does that, and others. But every software business does that.
Atlassian don't do it hugely.
I know, it's actually quite common in Australia. And so what that means is that, I'll just use the same $1 million. The $1 million that the company spends on developers this year, building software that will be used by third parties, customers who buy it, not internal software really, not maintenance of existing products, new developments. You could say that's kind of like a shop fit out. And so it's not tangible, you can't touch it, but it's similar.
Yeah.
And so let's go and put that on the balance sheet as well as an asset instead of expensing it. And over the next 5 years, we'll amortise $200,000 a year of that the way we would with a shop fitting. And so now in my EBITDA, or EBITDA, you can call it.
So just on that, there's usually rules around how much you can capitalise.
And there's the rules for all of this. Like you can go to the ATO, and if you're bored and boring, you can open their book and you can see this is the depreciation schedule for everything.
Do you know which company has the highest rate of capitalisation of IT workers that I've ever seen?
Globally?
Yeah.
Oh, that you've ever seen?
That I've ever
How
seen.
do I get into that? I mean,
Take a guess.
oh, God. I'm trying to think
Begins
about...
with C.
Oh, no, I'm not going to say that.
Say it.
Satire.
Say it. Satire.
Okay.
100% of their IT wage is capitalised.
This is why there are edits.
That's actually complete. It's a legitimate fact. Look at their profit
When
and
you
loss. Look
listen
at
to
P&L.
when you listen to this podcast, you'll hear almost all of that, but you'll say, "Didn't he say something about illegal?"
Well, I'm pretty sure it's illegal.
Okay, so I'm going to finish the EBITDA line. And so if you get really high up, what you do is you say, this is how much we've earned. Look how big the number is. And people will be really impressed by that. And they'll say, oh, what's the EBITDA multiple that this company trades on? And what that means is, this is how much money we've made before we paid tax, before we paid any interest on any debt, after we generated revenue from our assets, but before we paid for any depreciation or amortization of any of our assets. That's EBITDA. Now, there is a time where that's legitimate. That used to be, and sometimes still is, a good proxy for cash.
Yep.
Because depreciation and amortization are non-cash expenses. So actually, the bit that's cash is paying for the fit out in the first place. But when you depreciate it down, you're not paying cash for that. So it kind of should, when you take out the depreciation and amortization, it'll match cash, but then you have to take out your new expenses that you're incurring onto the balance sheet. But that's like the story of EBITDA. And the reason people are cynical about it is because companies will often, that don't, well, we're not talking about Guzman y Gomez, but the question is, where do you put, should you report the revenue you generate from stores without reporting the lease costs and the depreciation of the fit out that you had to make in those stores? Because EBITDA essentially is reporting the revenue you make in stores without the depreciating costs of the fit out and other expenses that you need in order to make those sales. That's a long-winded explanation of how you get from NPAT to EBITDA.
Yeah. And it got even more ridiculous probably during the WeWork era.
I'll tell you how we got there.
Before we get there, can I talk about the WeWork segue? So Adam Newman, who famously ran WeWork till it still goes, but he's out, he created something called community adjusted EBITDA, where he also, I think he removed marketing costs from EBITDA.
That's
so it became just completely ridiculous. Got a completely debauched, unusable metric.
It's I think it was what the community of founders wished that earnings were.
Well, the person who's railed against EBITDA for many years is Warren Buffett. He's always hated EBITDA.
Yeah. But also, he hasn't been historically involved in tech.
Tech business,
and the creation of intangible assets when you develop software is a legitimate expense. That's a much more honest accounting treatment than just expensing it in the current year.
And ultimately, where it gets adjusted out is you should be seeing a lower EBITDA multiple than a PE multiple. So if someone trades on a PE multiple of 30, which is not
which is how many times your net profit after tax is your market capitalisation, is your business valued at.
And then let's say it's 30, usually your EBITDA multiple might be 12 or 13.
That's
so
right.
There's usually it drops off.
So you were talking about this because we were talking about Tripper Deal and they were sold for $400 million and you said they make money, and I say, do they? And you said they make EBITDA, and then I rolled my eyes.
Yeah, and I said there's not much DAR in that.
Yeah, so they don't have much depreciation and amortization.
Exactly. So I think
do you think that they were
business.
sold on more than Why don't you call it EBIT if there's not much depreciation? Now we're going to have this argument. I mean, it's a pretty boring argument, but just say EBIT if there's not much depreciation and amortization.
Okay, I reckon they may. I don't know. I'm totally guessing.
I won that argument quickly.
I reckon it was a 15-ish times multiple.
Okay.
I don't know exactly how much they're making, but
not crazy, but healthy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not some of the stuff we see in the tech world still.
So you don't need to comment on this, but I just want to say the message that I sent you when I saw this last night was you must be very happy about the price that TripADeal just sold for, considering where your business sits in the same market and your relative sizes. And it's a good day for you, that deal.
Yeah, I think it's really, some people look at competitors getting bought out and they're sort of jealous of it.
I thought you said they weren't a competitor.
You know, it's tangential businesses. What is this, bloody Matlock?
No, it's hard talk.
It's but we look at someone in our sector, and that's great for the sector. It's great for the guys who ran it, and it's obviously creates a nice halo effect over the sector as well, and creates a great comparable multiple, which is what you're always looking for. So we take that as we always want to see entrepreneurs doing well, like these guys have done, and we always want to see your sector buoyant. So
and well done, Ben Gray, as well, because it is tricky. It is tricky earning money on $2.5 billion fund when you get to take a 2% management fee and a 20% carry. That's a tough way to live your life.
I think an even better investment for Ben Gray. So
I'm assuming that's their metrics, by the way. Unlike you, I'm happy to make some disclaimers. That's my assumption.
That's the common 2 and 2. Do you want to explain 2 and 20?
Although, by the way, Benchmark, the VC in the US, they would take 30% carry.
Well, have you seen Rentec, Renaissance Technologies, which is James Simons, which he passed away? There was an Acquired episode on it recently. I know you hate me talking about Acquired. But Rentec...
why do you say you hate me talking about it?
No, you hate when I talk about it.
No, you're correct. But but then why do you say that as if it's just this annoying fly that has landed over there and you're acknowledging it, but you're not going to let it affect your life?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
But they had an episode a couple of months ago, and I think Rentec's... It's a bit different because they didn't have for many years haven't had new money in, but they charge a 40% carry, and I think it's 5% or something like that. Yeah. And they've delivered, I think they've averaged 60% before fees and 40% after fees. So it's an incredible business.
So this is 2 and 20. You basically have $100 million of money to manage, and every year you get to take 2% of that as a management fee to run your business, so $2 million, which is reasonable. And to run these businesses, like they have to employ people, that's what you pay all of your expenses out of. And when you go and sell the assets that you've bought with $100 million, you get to keep 20% of the profit that was made on that asset base. Yep. So if the $100 million turned into $200 million, then you'd say, well, we made $100 million on it, so we get to keep 20% of that. It's called the carry, so we get to keep 20 mil minus whatever management fees you took out along the way.
And sometimes the carry is based on a hurdle as well.
Yeah, so often you say, we only get to keep this performance fee if we get
7% IRR.
Yeah, it's grown by more than 7% a year. That's a hurdle. But by the way, if it has grown by more than 7% a year, you get to keep the whole thing, not just a bit over 7% a year. And so that sounds like a fair business until you say, now we're managing $5 billion and our annual management fee is $100 million. Well, you can't spend $100 million in management fees. And so people get very rich off the management fees at large funds.
So BGH did another great acquisition, which is they still own it, but they bought Village Roadshow. I think it's about 4 years ago.
By the way, can I just say, Benchmark Capital in the US of VC, one of their
early in Uber,
early in everything.
The famous Uber,
summarize, except
Uber
Google.
series has a lot of
yes, that's right.
Bill Gurley in it.
So one of their funds was a $500 million fund, USD, and I reckon they returned 10 bill.
How much was the fund?
500 million. Yeah. And so let's just call the growth 10 billion, because it might have been 10.5 billion. Like, the initial amount is inconsequential for the calculation. They take 30% fees. Yeah. So their partners made $3 billion to split between, I think it's the 5 of them on that fund. That is why people like being in venture capital. But not many succeed like that. Mostly they fail.
And you've heard of the First Round Capital, who was one of the first checks into Uber, which is a VC. Yeah. That was actually, they were part of Rentec. So the founder of First Round and the founder of Rentec had sort of a JV almost. They both invested in each other's businesses. And I think the First Round guy made as much out of First Round as he did out of Rentec, which is one of the greatest stories ever. So First Round was an incredible story.
It's like, I think Jeff Bezos was a very early investor in Google.
Yeah, absolutely. He made more money out of Google than he did out of Amazon for a long time.
For a long time, but let's not get carried away.
Now,
But
maybe not, yeah.
Can we talk about a business?
Well, I'm just finishing the Village Roadshow thing.
I don't even remember we were talking about that.
Well, and so Ben invested in Village Roadshow. It's been just a great story. So it was there was a few issues before he bought it. He came in, they delisted it from the ASX. So it was an ASX listed business that probably shouldn't have been.
Yeah.
And this is a great example of when private equity.
You
is
worked
on
for
a winner.
Village Roadshow.
We work with them a lot. Yeah. So
I thought you worked for them.
When I was 19.
When you
me
worked
and Jez
for Radek
ripped
Saleh.
tickets. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Great job. So they've done this. They did this great deal, and what they recognised was a couple of things. They fixed the management. So Clark came in as CEO. Clark Kirby, who's the grandson of the founder, Rock. And usually you have this sort of trope that the sort of second generation makes it better and the third generation stuffs up. Clark's done the opposite. He's made it even better. He's been a great CEO. They've been able to increase ticket prices because they realised there was inelasticity in that demand. Significantly increased ticket prices.
I noticed the ticket
prices. That's a cash
prices have
machine
gone
now.
up.
That is just an unbelievable. They've got a guy called Bakash who runs the parks business, who's a superstar. It's a business that's done unbelievably well with just great management and great foresight by the BGH team in picking up an asset that was just ripe to be bought.
Where private equity, this is my view, where private equity understands how businesses make money, they can add immense economic value. And where they mostly understand financial engineering or they deploy that, they are at least as often value destroyers as value creators.
I think in Australia, there aren't many private equity firms that I don't respect. I think they generally are very good here. Again, from PEP to Quadrant to BGH, there's a lot of great firms who do a great job.
My favourite part about that line is that we have to edit none of your comments out of that bit of the podcast.
We might actually go to a quick break for 30 seconds and be back with our next story. We're going to talk about a business you actually brought up, and then we're going to get Adrian Giles on the stage.
Fantastic.
So looking forward to that.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. So we went a little bit over time, so we'll break for 20 minutes. We'll come back, we'll talk about a business, then we'll get Adrian up, and then we'll go into questions. Hopefully questions are coming through thick and fast. Thanks, everyone. We're back.